Hey guys, welcome to Taking the Time. We are here with Brian and Brad talking about history of the pilot watch. So hopefully we'll show you or provide some new information about pilot watches that you might not have known. But first we're going to do a quick wrist check. What are you wearing today, Brian?
All right, today in the essence of pilots, I'm not really sure if this is going to fall in, but today is Tissot. Let's see,
the controversial plastic gear.
Yeah, this one has the plastic fork in it. Didn't sell well originally, and now you can. Originally, I think the original MSRP in 2011. Yeah, that's how was around 11 or $1,200. Now you can pop on Amazon or even one of your favorite watch dealers and pick one up around $400. So and it's got a great ETA or ETA automatic movement. It's a legit automatic chronograph. It will accept manual winding as well as just moving your own body around with it. It looks like it was this particular one looks like it was designed by a child who saw an accident at a construction site with the caution orange and black. And although you can't see all the little lines that are on it, it kind of looks like that rotating bezel that it has cardinal directions instead of something more practical and a date complication. So altogether, I've been wearing this almost every day and just whooping this thing. And I mean, mowing the lawn, doing yard work, it doesn't matter. It takes it and it rocks and rolls. If you want one, you can get them in also black and white. And really, it's solid. So yeah, don't. So what do you have there?
Today I've got the Bronze Raider.
Oh, very nice.
The only one in black, and there's only 2 bronze case Raiders right now. And a gentleman named Chris in Texas has the other one.
Yeah, he has the white dial version, doesn't he?
Correct. Yeah,
and that is
2 bronze made.
Yeah, they came out amazing.
Yeah, I really do like the way the black and the bronze work together. So I had to keep that one.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to talk briefly about the history of the pilot watch. Obviously, Mitchell being a pilot brand, aviation inspired brand, this is right up my alley. If you want more information, if you go to mitchelltimepieces.com, you can see the history of the pilot watch. It's just a simple date list type of information, but it will kind of give you the flow of how things go from the beginning of flight to in the 50s when the big brands and jets started coming into play. So first up on our list is Cartier. In 1904, Cartier created the Santos for Albert Santos Dumont, which is credited for the first powered flight in Europe. So it's pretty interesting. A lot of people think of Cartier as a dress watch or a fashion brand, and they definitely do a lot of fashion brand stuff with jewelry and things like that. But they have an extensive history in watchmaking and in timepieces, including this first pilot watch. So.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic watch. It's more of the kind of the semi-rounded square, more square-looking dial, and just it by today's standards would probably most people would think, oh, well, that's more of a dress watch. But at the time, you're talking turn of the previous century now, and that was a pilot watch, and what are the pretty much the criteria for pilot watches? Big numbers, that easy to read, You know, if you're flying something, especially the first one, and those guys were wild. I mean, they were like the astronauts of their time, and you know, just total adrenaline junkies. They had to just be able to glance at it and tell exactly what time it was, and that was pretty much it. It was 100% function. It didn't have, you know, a whole lot of extras or, you know, extra components or anything.
Yeah.
And
Cartier and Santos Dumont were actually friends. So that's how that relationship came about. He's like, hey, I need a watch that I can easily read when I'm trying to fly this machine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cartier's like, I've got you.
So, yeah, and it's fantastic how they, you know, 100 years later, you could still buy versions of that watch brand new.
Yeah, and I don't think they really changed it until the late 90s, if I remember. That was like the first actual change. I know there's different sizes of the Santos. There's different variations too. Quartz, automatic. But I mean, you can still get basically the same watch that was created back in early 1900s now. With very little change aesthetically.
Yeah, I mean, just, you know, things you update. You're going to update the loom. You're going to, you know, you're not going to use some radioactive paint anymore. You know, it's a little more eco-friendly and it's a little more user-friendly, but it's basically the same watch, and it's really fantastic that they stuck with it.
Yeah, those bold Roman numerals, the stick hands. Yeah.
Yeah. And
what's next on the list?
Okay.
What's after?
Okay, well, we have next up is the Zenith, actually. And it was a Zenith special. And I have a picture of it here. I have actually been compiling some other pictures, too. A good friend of mine in Ireland, Ray Kavanaugh had sent me a bunch of pictures of some of the watches that we're going to be talking about, the newer versions. Unfortunately, Brad and I were having technical difficulties on getting the watches actually on the screen without just being like, hey, here's a watch.
Yeah.
And this is the watch.
What we'll do for the YouTube audience is we'll create a graphic that's set up in the video. And we can show that Zenith from 1909, and the milestone that's credited with is crossing the English Channel. French aviator Louis Charles Joseph Beyrot. We'll go with that.
Leroux?
I probably pronounced that a little bit wrong. The last name, anyway.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and basically he strapped on this Zenith, and he's credited with the first heavier than air flight across the English Channel. I don't know if you could see from my rough pictures, you know, that I did kind of wave in front of the camera. Pretty basic, very, very, very much a pilot watch. Large numerals, easy to read hands, and not a whole lot else going on. I mean, simple leather, NATO style, what we would call now strap. And this guy was known, to be, I want to say that like the king of crashes. He was really dedicated to aviation, and he kind of was kind of the Evel Knievel of aviation at the time. And they said, there's no way, Mr. Frenchman, that you're going to ever fly across the English Channel. And the prize was like 1,000 British pounds, adjusted for inflation. I don't know what it was back then or today, but it's the equivalent of 1,000 pounds. It's about, I don't know, $1,200, or after Brexit might be like $50, but sorry guys over there. I know you're really hurting on that one, but he really just didn't care. And he actually designed
at least once, right? He crashed into the channel at least once trying, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. I mean, he, I'm trying to look back. It's I mean, just amazing. Yeah.
And
Man,
the Zenith watch is currently available. The homage to it, if you will, is the Pilot Type 20 Extra Special. Well, that's one of them, anyways. They make a whole line of the extra special Pilot, and it's got a nice big fat onion crown. It's got the nice strong font, and similar to Cathedral Hands, but a
yeah.
little bit sharper than what you would think on a Cathedral hand.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I know it's not the best, and but the newer one, it has hands similar to this.
Yeah.
And I'm only showing very bad pictures because it's difficult to, think of, when you talk about different kinds of hands, and everybody's like, oh, well, cathedral hands could be this or this or this. Yeah. And I mean, it's crazy that in 1909, he crossed 31 miles of. I'm very unprofessional. My phone rang. Across the 31 miles of the English Channel, open water. It's cold. If he went in, he's talking. Unless there's people that rescue boat or something there near where he went in, it was probably going to have hypothermia and drown. 31 miles, made it across in 40 minutes at an altitude between 150 and 300 feet. And, so he's flying low, so anybody that was under him in a boat could probably see the terror and excitement on his face as he's, flying this rickety craft across the English Channel, which is notorious for bad weather and squalls and things that come out of nowhere. And, but he did it. And so that Zenith is, it's implanted in that aviation, and
number two in the history books for pilot watches on the chronological milestones.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All right. Next up, we have quite a gap here from 1909 to 1927. That's Charles Lindbergh and the Longines that crossed the Atlantic. So a lot of progress was made between 1909 and 1927. Think about barely going across the 31-mile channel in 40 minutes to flying all the way across the Atlantic. Charles Lindbergh completed that with a Longines, and this is a very unique Longines. If you ever look that watch up, it has quite an eccentric dial for a watch.
Yeah, Longines, they really did it well. I've seen that aircraft actually in the Smithsonian, the Spirit of St. Louis. Had no windshield really. If I remember correctly, and basically the whole thing was a flying fuel tank. So it was one seat, and and a whole lot of fuel and some wheels on the bottom and giant wings, and that's it. And he made it.
Yeah.
With the Longines just on his wrist, and hope and a prayer. I don't know. It's pretty much a compass is all. He didn't. These weren't modern times when these people did this. It was really rather crazy, but
And the watch. When I look at this watch, I don't think of a pilot watch at all because it's busy. The dial's very busy. There's Roman numerals on the outside track. There's Arabic numbers on the inside track. There's another track for the seconds, and it does have a nice fat onion crown. But man, the watch is just busy. If I was going to choose a pilot watch right now, it definitely would not be that one.
Not for that kind of harrowing experience where you just. And I mean, you have to remember. I mean, he's open ocean. Most of that trip was done at night.
I'd like to get into the mind because he actually helped design the watch. So it's kind of like to be in the mind of of Mr. Lindbergh when he was designing that to kind of get a full understanding and justification of how he designed that and why. I know part of it was due to some of the challenges of pilots getting lost and things like that, but that watch is very interesting. I saw a thing pop up when I was trying to find some more information that it was actually the new release version of it's like $5,000.
Yeah.
That's on the top of the food chain for Longines, I believe.
Yeah, it's there's definitely, like I said, I have I had gotten a bunch of pictures, and unfortunately, like I said, a good friend of mine, Emerald Isle, had gone through the ringer to get me some pictures, and unfortunately, it's not going to do them justice to stick it in front of a webcam. But
yeah,
thank.
We'll get the graphic up for the YouTube folks, and we can share it around. So that's no big deal. So all right, 27. We're moving on up the food chain to 1936. This little watch company called IWC.
Yeah, it was in its infancy, similar to Volkswagen at the time. Was small company, and so that kind of says where the IWC Big Pilot is going. It was a German watch company at the time. Are they still German?
I believe, yeah.
I think so. They may have some Swiss pieces in it, but and they're
Swiss. I'm sorry, you're right.
They were bought, I think, post-war by the Swiss. Probably got it for a really good deal because their factory was probably rubble because they were the ones who provided the watches to the German Air Force or the Luftwaffe.
And that Big Pilot was 55 millimeters.
Oh yeah, massive. I mean,
and IWC wasn't the only brand to make that. There was Laco, there was A-Lang, and Sohn, Wimpey, and Stoa. So there was several brands that were making that exact same watch, that giant, huge pilot watch.
Yeah.
That, the bombers actually wore so they could synchronize bombs and time runs, things like that. And they made a throwback to that, a 55 millimeter version with modern, crystal movement, things like that. And it sold for like $15,000. So it was a limited edition. Pretty amazing piece, though.
And they're still making them. They're still making nice big pilot watches. They're clean. I mean, when we talked about doing a pilot watch episode, my first thought at everything was IWC, and because it gives such a commanding presence on the wrist. I mean, it looks like an aviation dial that they just scaled.
That's where the Type A and the Type B dials came from. This is a Type A dial, but that's where that rooted from is World War II. Is those two primary pilot dials that you think of?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it was at the time. It was extremely important to be able to precisely time. It was basically synchronize their watches to, drop bombs at X time, and that was it. I mean, a lot of these, you're going back, and like I said, this wasn't modern stuff. They really just they needed the precision. They knew about how long it should take, say, to fly from wherever the airfield was in France before they should be over this part of the UK. They didn't have radar. They didn't have any of that. So, I mean, and they pretty much went off of times and cardinal directions. So, yeah, pretty impressive when you think that those were used as, effective. They were very effective in warfare, and it's really cool.
All right, so we're finishing the pre-war section and we're purposely leaving out the American timepieces, the Hamiltons, the Walthams, and the Elgins. So the GCT we're leaving out. Those are pocket watches specifically that the Americans were using during World War II. If you guys are interested in that, let us know in the comments if that's something that you want to learn about or hear about in the show, because we can absolutely do that. I have examples of each. It's quite an interesting thing if you're that much of a nerd like I am. So now that we've finished the pre-war, we got the post-war, and the first big event was in '52, right? Is that right, Brian?
I believe so. Yeah, 1952. Or you might be talking about the Breitling nav timer.
Yep, that's the one.
Ah, entering the jet age. It's exciting for aviation. Even though we were using propeller planes up through Korea and even into Vietnam, we still use propellers, but we did have some jets, and I think a majority of air travel was still propeller planes, but we were starting to get into more jet technology, and ways towards basically more modern, point A to point B at 500 and something miles an hour at pressurized cabins and things like that, which back, in the 50s, you probably had a propeller plane with 16 stops to go to Australia or something like that. So it was going to be a long flight. But yeah, I mean, Breitling nav timer, it's kind of
it's the introduction of the chronograph, and really, in a lot of ways, the pilot watches that you think of now are mostly chronographs, unless it's a vintage-inspired piece. It seems like, anyway. IWC makes a lot of chronographs. If you think of the space race and space, you think of the Omega Speedy, which is a chronograph, which is so. I mean, that Breitling really said, "Okay, we're doing chronographs now." And it seems like a lot of people followed suit.
Yeah, immensely popular. And it was kind of the first fashion statement and highly accurate timepiece kind of that they put out. I mean, so it was kind of the era of the Playboy pilots. You fly people over the French Riviera and then spend the next day, a few days, partying in the south of France before you had to fly back. And, the big silver watch on your wrist and, all kinds of things. And it was the beginning of that lifestyle, the beginning of the jet set age, even though they weren't jets yet, but it was that, oh yeah, well, I'm in for the weekend and, look at my nice big shiny watch too. So it was practical in the air and on the ground, and everybody liked it, and it looked really cool. Let's face it. I mean, you don't buy just an ugly, boring watch and go, oh, this is the greatest thing on earth. You want something that really kind of captures what it is you like about watches. And that, I think that really with the nav timer, that's what it did, is it caught both. It was function meets it was the first one to show that function can be handsome, and it was kind of more of that like Playboy pilot era. So and
the Navitimers were a large watch for the time too.
Yeah.
So they were definitely maybe indirectly a statement piece as well.
I think so. Yeah, I mean,
when I think of Breitling, I automatically think of the Navitimer. That's their marquee piece.
Yeah.
Even still, I don't think they're as popular as they used to be, but that's the iconic piece for Breitling, really, and the one that has such heritage with them.
Yeah, they went through some changes, and everybody has different opinions on how Breitling kind of moved through life, and then kind of people say, well, around this time they changed it and it got worse, or it got better, or everybody has an opinion. Some years were much more attractive than others, but yeah.
They actually share a factory, or they have an arrangement with Tudor currently that they share movements. It's like Tudor makes one movement for a certain Breitling, and then Breitling makes the chronograph movement for one of the specific Tudors. So that's kind of an interesting a relationship. It's a good segue into our last piece too. In 1950, was it 54 or 55? I thought it was 54 that the GMT Master came about. So now we're talking about Rolex, and that's our final stop on the journey of the first pilot. It's 55. My fault.
You beat me. I thought it was. I was looking. I was looking for it. I was like, I want to be sure, because this is, of course, not just watches, but also a history lesson. So we kind of have to be accurate. You can't just be like, oh, yeah, it was in the 50s.
Yeah. So 1955, Rolex introduced the GMT Master. They worked with Pan Am Airways to create that watch. Interesting thing about that is there is a unicorn GMT Master out there with a white dial, which I guess some of the execs got a white dial GMT Master. Every other GMT Master you're ever going to see had a black dial. And of course, I think it's still only available in a black dial. They made a root beer, a brown dial, a root beer dial in the 70s. But all the steel watches had a black dial, especially there in the early 50s or in the 50s. But there was a white dial that I believe some of the executives got from Pan Am. So a white dial GMT Master. I should have the reference number off the top of my head, but I don't. It's not a 1675. There was one model before that. It was like a 64 or something. That's embarrassing. I used to know all my reference numbers for Rolex, but it's the model before the 1675, which is probably the most iconic vintage GMT Master. So, and I think out of all these, people are gonna bust my balls for this, but GMT is probably my favorite out of this list. I really like the IWC Big Pilot, but it's too big for me. It's a 46 millimeter watch. I really do like the Zenith Extra Special that's out now. That's a really cool watch. If you said, hey, pick a GMT or a Zenith, I would probably have a hard time picking between those two. Which one would you pick out of the list?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm going to say either the IWC because of the size, and I am a sizable guy. It would definitely. I frequently wear a 50 millimeter watch, and it looks like a regular watch on my wrist. But the other one could be the Zenith. You'd think that I would immediately go to Breitling Nav Timer. I do love that watch. It will always be a classy watch unless they just, I don't know, do something terrible to it. But it is such, and it's iconic. I mean, people see it and they know what it is, and you can spot one from across the room. It's really amazing. But learning about these, the new Zenith, I think is really, really cool. I would get the larger one, obviously, and the Longines is excellent as well. Like I said, I have some pictures from a friend of mine, and he had sent me pictures of his Longines. That's the newer one. Like I said, we just can't with the technical difficulties, but thank you to Ray Kavanagh at the Emerald Isle in Ireland for the fantastic pictures. I assure you we will figure out a way to use some of these one of these days. But the IWC is just I don't own one yet, so I mean, I think I would go there. They have a day date complication that's pretty easy. Um, yeah, so that's one of my things. I like a date complication. The day, take it or leave it, but it's yeah, I think that one probably would kind of be at the top of my list.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and that's what we're gonna pose to you guys before leave is in the comments. I want to know which one would be your favorite. Which one would you pick? Would you pick a Cartier, a Zenith, a Longines, an IWC, a Breitling, or a Rolex GMT Master? So if you want to drop that in the comments, that is it for our quick history lesson of the pilot watches. If you like this, let us know. If you didn't like it, let us know.
Yeah,
We're coming up with different content and putting a show out once a week, and we're trying to stick to that 30-minute mark. So let us know how we're doing and what you'd like to see, and we will see you next time on Taking the Time. Thank you very much.
This is Brian Coach, Dr. Q signing off. Till next time.